Viridian, the Green Guide, written by Clouds, read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 13, Problem Child. Shouta couldn't help playing with the marble Viridian had thrown at him earlier as he sat by Tsukauchi's desk after his shift. The kid was smart, making the marbles pull triple duty as a way to call heroes, ammo, and a sort of makeshift signature. Viridian would be a popular and effective hero if he'd just get off the streets and into a hero program, but first, he'd have to learn how to take better care of himself, because he really shouldn't be on the streets the night after he was almost killed. The kid must have an insane pain tolerance to be out and fighting so soon. The only indication that Viridian had been injured at all was a moderately slower running speed and a slight stiffness when he twisted, but he hadn't let it hold him back as he fought. Shouta didn't know if Viridian had broken his ribs or just bruised them, but the kid shouldn't be so used to working through the pain. He also shouldn't be used to hiding his injuries. Shouta wasn't even sure the problem child had been doing it consciously, because the way the kid had been doing it instinctively, like pretending he was fine, was a habit he'd developed after years of practice. And wasn't that concerning? Viridian's obviously high pain tolerance and tendency to hide his injuries were just the latest entries in a disturbingly long list of concerns that Shouta had about the kid. He ran straight into danger when the most intelligent thing to do was run away. And if there was one thing Shouta knew, it was that Viridian wasn't stupid. He'd known the kid was smart just from the way he'd memorized everyone's patrol routes, and that intelligence had only been confirmed by the way he targeted any weakness he could in his target's defenses. But then he'd seen the notebook. The kid was probably a genius, and Nedzu would be salivating if he had a chance to read what Shouta had, and yet the kid insisted he wasn't smart. At first, Shouta had assumed he was joking, but the more he thought about the conversation they'd had earlier, the more he realized that Viridian honestly believed what he'd said. Shouta didn't know if he even wanted to think about what must have happened in Viridian's life to convince the kid that he was an idiot despite his obvious skills, and that was even more true if he had an analysis quirk. Which brought Shouta back to his list of concerns. If the kid thought he was stupid despite his intelligence, what other lies did he believe? Did he somehow think he was worthless? Did he think that his life was worth less than the lives of the people he saved? Shouta thought back to the fight with the crab villain. Viridian hadn't thought twice about giving up his weapons so Shouta could fight more effectively. And then the first thing he'd done after the fight was ask if Shouta was okay, with no regard for his own safety or well-being. It was like Viridian had decided in that moment that it was okay if he died as long as Shouta lived. He stared at the marble again, seeing how the green and black swirled together. Was the kid... Oh, you got one too! Shouta flinched as Amplifier's overly peppy voice practically yelled behind him, and he almost dropped the marble. As it was, he fumbled it and only just managed to palm it before it rolled onto the floor. He turned to glare at Amplifier, who smiled sheepishly at him. Sorry? What do you guys have? Tsukauchi asked as he walked up with paperwork and coffee. Viridian's got a new calling card. Amplifier grinned and dug around in her pockets before triumphantly showing Tsukauchi a green marble identical to the one Shouta had almost dropped. He started throwing these instead of rocks so that we know it's him. Tsukauchi frowned at the marble, then turned to Shouta. And you have one too? Shouta sighed and showed Tsukauchi his marble. Honestly, he wouldn't be surprised if the marbles become a badge of honor among the local heroes. He could see them turning it into some sort of membership card for an exclusive club of heroes Viridian trusted, even though Viridian went to heroes based on availability, not trust or competence. Still, he wouldn't put it beyond his colleagues to start collecting them. It seems he's embracing his popularity then, Tsukauchi said bitterly, if he's putting in the extra effort to have his signature. I don't think that's what he had in mind, Shouta said as he put his marble away. I don't know if you've heard, but Viridian somehow got his hands on a slingshot, and the marbles are his primary ammo. As far as I know, he wasn't actually planning on them being a calling card. He has a slingshot? Amplifier bounced up and down in her seat. Have you seen him use it? Is his aim any good? Shouta nodded. He hasn't mastered it by any means, but he's good enough to get the job done. He led me to a group earlier and kept pelting them with marbles to distract them and make them easier for me to take down. And he didn't hit me once. He'll probably get better with it the longer he trains, but for now he seems to be more comfortable with close-range combat. He has some dual-wielding pipes that he uses as bludgeoning weapons. Pipes? Tsukauchi asked. Aren't they considered an improvised weapon? Why didn't he invest in something better like tonfa? There are more than enough illegal weapons dealers that he wouldn't have a problem finding something. And yet, the problem child chooses to use something that can be bought at literally any hardware store. Shouta said, it does make him harder to track. Not that we're going to bother, Amplifier piped up. He's not hurting anyone. He's a vigilante, Tsukauchi said sternly, and we need to be prepared to capture him if he ever crosses the line into villainy. You both know how common that is. They were all silent for a moment as they remembered Stendhal and the other vigilantes who had turned. Vigilantes tended to make extremely frightening villains. Viridian's still young, Shouta said finally. There's still time to guide him onto the right path. Yeah, Amplifier agreed. He's just a kid, so go easy on him, Suki. Tsukauchi sighed heavily. Just keep an eye on him. If he gives any indication that he's going too far, you need to bring him in. If we catch him quickly enough, he might even be a candidate for the Vigilante Rehabilitation Program. That does the old thing? Amplifier asked. I thought it was just an artifact from the time when hero licensors were still getting started. Has anyone even gone through the program in the last few decades? It's not common by any means, Shouta said, because society expects heroes to start legally now, but the laws are still on the books. Since the program hasn't been overturned, law enforcement can still petition the Hero Commission to allow a vigilante to participate, provided that they don't use excessive force in their takedowns. And since vigilantes like Knuckle Duster, who routinely beat villains to a pulp, are more common, Tsukauchi said, most modern vigilantes don't qualify. The Hero Commission isn't likely to approve an untrained kid like Viridian for the program anyway. Otherwise, I'd try to get him approved now. I guess that makes sense, Amplifier pouted. But I still would love to see Viridian as a legit hero. Can you imagine seeing kids with green hoodies and little marbles on keychains or something? What makes you think he'll even want merch? Shouta said. He might want to stay underground. Don't be ridiculous! Amplifier waved away his concerns. He's a happy young teenager. Of course he wants to be famous. Shouta frowned. The kid had only one article written about him, but even that had seemed to make him uncomfortable. And Shouta was also worried that happy wasn't the right word to describe Viridian's mental state. What's wrong, Eraser? Tsukauchi asked. Something's nagging at you. It's just... Shouta dragged a hand down his face, making him look even more exhausted than he actually was. There's a lot of little things that have been adding up, and I'm not quite sure what to do about it. Maybe we can help? Tsukauchi said kindly. What's bothering you? I think Viridian might be depressed. Shouta said. What? Amplifier said. He's a teenage boy. Why would he be depressed? From what I've gathered, he doesn't have the best life. Shouta started rolling the marble between his fingers again. Last night, he almost died helping me with a fight, but he was out again tonight, fighting like it had never even happened. So he's reckless, Tsukauchi said. That's pretty common in teenagers. It doesn't mean he's depressed. Yes, being reckless is normal in teenagers. I'm a teacher, so I know that better than most. But Viridian's recklessness goes beyond what I see in my students. Shouta said, it's almost like he believes that his life isn't worth anything, which isn't an attitude someone develops overnight. You think he might be being abused, Tsukauchi said in realization. Shouta shook his head. Not at home. Viridian's never mentioned that, but when I mentioned school once, the kid completely shut down. Bullies, Tsukauchi said. Shouta nodded. He acts like he's used to hiding injuries and pain, so it's possible he's trying to hide the bullying from his family. That means he's been treating his injuries himself, doesn't it? Amplifier said, remember that first time I actually talked to him? A store clerk got severe burns during a robbery, and when I went to go check on the victim, Viridian had already given first aid. When I asked him how he knew how to do that, he just said he'd had a lot of practice. I didn't think anything of it at the time. But do you think? Shouta sighed. Unfortunately, yes. He most likely had to practice on himself. I don't think the bullying is entirely physical, though. Psychologically. He trailed off. It was just a hunch, but he hoped he was wrong. He hoped that Viridian was emotionally resilient and had access to the correct resources to deal with the abuse he faced at home. He hoped that the problem child had become a vigilante because he thought they were cool or to annoy the heroes. But Tsukauchi gestured for him to continue, and Shouta sighed. He doesn't know his own worth. I got a peek at his notebook tonight, and the kid is brilliant, but he seems to genuinely believe that he's stupid. He runs into fights that he isn't prepared for, and he doesn't seem to care about his own safety, despite the fact that he is almost excessively worried about the safety of the victims, and even the heroes he's fighting with. The first time I met him, I told him that he shouldn't get into fights because he didn't want to die, and he hesitated. Shouta rubbed the bridge of his nose in exhaustion and frustration as Amplifier and Tsukauchi stared at him with wide eyes. I think Viridian might be suicidal. End of chapter.